It's really a blessing for some of people who don't know or they're here. Thank you for joining this webinar with USA Team, and congrats to USA Team for creating this platform for all over the world that people to join and learn and share. And that's kind of part of my passion too. That's why I'm here, to share my journey and hopefully have an impact to what I've learned and to have an impact on other people. So for me, it's a blessing because kind of my life changed when I went to USA Team for a tryout in 2000, and my career took off. So to last a few weeks ago, I was back in Colorado Springs, where coaching NTDP talent, and I was just looking at the gym where we used to train and learn how to jump serve and learn how to compete and become a team, and just to see the young players right now in kind of a full circle. So it's been quite a journey for me. As you said, thank you for introduction. I won't take much time, as you were great at introducing myself for my career. But I mean, truly, I grew up in Albania. It's a communist country, east of Europe. My dream as a 12-year-old kid was to become the best setter in the world, and my world was about 10,000 people and stuck in a small city. Little did I know that at age 16, 17, I'd moved to US, to Boston, for truly a better life. I mean, to be an immigrant and washing dishes and selling Dunkin' Donuts, but my passion for volleyball never died, and I was always committed to become the best athlete possible all my life, and especially at a young age. Although I was an immigrant and just working all day, I would find time to go lift or run or just play at a local high school for fun. So long story short, through that year and a half in Boston, I was seen by some coaches in the area, and they invited me to play some pickup games, and we started cold calling every college in America. Everybody said no except USC, and I moved 97 to University of Southern California, where Jim McLaughlin was the head coach back then, and he saw something in me, offered me a scholarship, which I didn't know what that meant back in the day, but it helped me, pay the bills, because I didn't know that you had to pay for school in US. Went to USC. It was a great school, and great kind of inclusive, kind of a family type oriented culture there, where they really cared about the student athlete. They really cared about an athlete, right, to grow on and off the court. And for me, that really changed my life, as they really paid attention. I was an immigrant, didn't speak English, and I spoke very broken English. So had a great career, great time there with the coaches, Pat Powers, gold medalist, Olympian. As Jim left for the women's game, Pat was my coach, and he really kind of groomed me and, guided me how to become the best I could be on the court, but really paid attention to me as a person at a young age, right? Like, he really kind of feedback mattered to him, communication, and really allowed me, to be accountable and thrive in that environment. In 2000, after I finished at USC, I had one tryout with USA Team after Sydney Olympics, and at Colorado Springs, and I just kind of fell in love with the structure of USA national team. Doug Bill was my head coach back then, and he was truly believed that kind of hard work, blue collar mentality, in and out, but also listening and having that feedback and relationship with the players. So I was lucky enough to make the team for 12 years, 3 quads. People don't know it takes 4 years to qualify for the Olympics, so it's quite a long journey. And then we didn't have a professional league back then, so we had to go overseas and train some parts of the world with different coaches, different players, different system, different mindsets, different culture, different ways of communication. So for me, my first contract was in Poland, east of Poland. I was the first American athlete to play in Poland in 2001. Amazing crowd, incredible people that love volleyball, they work hard, but it was an interesting system of volleyball and coaching and training, because they really had kind of no emotions or no building relationships. You were there just kind of a gun for hire. This is back then. Things have changed now, I believe, but you kind of a gun for hire. So you're expected to run and jump and train all day, every day, 6 days a week. And there was no kind of two-way communication or feedback. So it was a very interesting year back then. I came back to national team. So, kind of switching those methods and the mindsets of coaching, even like the styles of playing, like blocking and setting and hitting. So it was difficult the first year. Came back, I went to Turkey for a couple of years after my first year in Poland, and as a whole different culture and mindset system, in Turkey, where, people are more chaotic, players are more individual, less hardworking or less committed to the process, and more interested in playing well on Sunday without doing the work the whole week, So it was kind of a free fall in terms of coaching style and in terms of, culture style there, that they would just buy a bunch of good players and you just play great on Sunday. During the week was, you make your own schedule type thing, But, going back and forth this first squad, I was in Poland and Turkey and USA, it really kind of grew me to be more adaptable, to be more adjustable, to different systems. And, but really at heart was like, I couldn't wait to come back to the gym with the USA team where everybody was committed. Everybody, had a great way of communication. The coaches cared about us, about how we felt, how we trained, how, what we needed was kind of a clear focus on progress, and process rather than like, hey, let's win the Olympics type thing. We had a goal of winning, but we really kind of took it one day at a time and had a great Athens game. We are young as a team. We lost in the quarterfinals to Russia. And then in 2005, we made a pact as a national team. We sat together with Coach Hugh McCutcheon, how we're going to win gold in China. And it was really a profound moment in my young career to have all the guys, young and old, from different quads, sit down for, a day and just write down a mission statement and kind of commit to the process of how we're going to win gold in China. And it was incredible, to let go of, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Pretty much. And so we had that process for 4 years. And then I got really lucky to go to play Italy for 7 years. And that really kind of was my biggest foundation as I went back and forth from US to Poland to Turkey to also 1 year in Greece in Olympiacos, which was, I feel like it's a vacation league because people really work out for 30 minutes and, they drink coffee for 2 hours, and again, kind of a similar structure as Turkey where individualism, let's play well on Sunday, who cares about 6 days, and you can never rely on a coaching structure. So, but Italy and USA was my best times in my career and grew me to become the best in the world. And unfortunately, I ruptured my Achilles in 2007 before China Olympics. I had to watch our team win gold, the pact we made in 2005 from a couch in Huntington Beach, which was very difficult to swallow. But I got back, I recovered. Thankful to USA team, medical staff. They kept me there for a year to recover from Achilles and went played in Russia, Italy again, Argentina, and Dubai, and then finish off my career in London, which for me personally was the best show of my career. I was in the best shape. I was actually older, 38, which is, sometimes I think it's pretty crazy to play at a high level at 38. But the variety of Poland and Russia, of those systems, and Argentina, which is super great on ball control, but again, kind of a chaotic, loud. Players would fight with each other. They would yell and scream in the same hour, and they become friends. Kind of very disorganized culture and team dynamics. But for me, like the foundation was built in USA team in Italy, and then they carried me over. And Dubai was just kind of a stop with my injury, and there was just another vacation league where people train 1 hour a day and they care about Sundays. So that's a bit about the playing, history. And if anybody has any questions in this moment, please feel free to add on chat or Q&A.
Yeah, Donald, we have a quick question here of kind of as you moved across each of those very different team dynamics and team cultures, how did that actually influence your performance as a player? How did you kind of adapt to each of those different cultures?
Great question. So that was very interesting because as a young player coming to America, people told me like you got to have a role model, right? Like who you looking up to be a setter? Like you want to be the best setter, but who you looking up to, right? So I had some setters from Brazil, USA team, and Serbia, actually, like Gerbic, and I was looking at them, kind of trying to copy them, right? And what I learned is that all these guys were different. They're different body, mind, physicality or culture, right? So for me, playing in all these different leagues and different coaching, different guys, what I tried to do throughout my career was like, hey, how can I take the best out of each situation and mold Donald to what Donald is, and Doug Bill, like my, Coach Doug told me at a young age, at national teams, like, hey, you're from Albania, it's a cultural thing. You guys are very high effort, high energy, loud, but you actually hurted the team because you have the kind of individualism. You care more about your stats, more about like me to play and be the starting lineup, more about the team, right? So going back to these leagues, right, and seeing that firsthand, that these guys care all about those kills or hits, the stats, right? They'll take the stat sheet, but they didn't care about covering or teamwork or communication. So I took the best out of each league, right? And I tried to mold Donald to what can I do best as Donald Suxho, you know? So that's what I did. I mean, I really paid attention to what was good, kind of flushed the and negativity of it. And, it wasn't easy, right? I mean, it's not like you do it overnight. It was a skill I learned, but I took each part of each league and I just tried to be the best I could be for USA team, and then go back to these pro leagues and stick with kind of like that belief system that, hey, this is who I am. This is what I can do best, and that helped me grow.
Yeah, I love that, Damo. It sounds like you kind of found that space of being yourself, but also understanding how you're integrating into part of the wider team culture.
Of course. And you have to be adaptable, right? I mean, it's not one way or the highway. Because again, like, when I played in Poland and Russia, it was kind of a one way or highway, right? I mean, this culture is this culture. It's a cultural thing. And if you don't pay attention to, I call humanized relationships, if you don't build relationships with coaches, even the culture of the people who are from those countries, it's very difficult to play, right? It's really hard. So once you understand their culture, how they behave, how they talk, how they smile, what ticks them, and that makes it a better, experience. So for me, I just try to become more adaptable, be one with those cultures, but not sink my level of play because of being there. Awesome. So, yeah, I mean, this is awesome. So, like, from all these plays, we try to share a little bit about, what I learned personally, like, from that. And, again, I'm sure that every coach, wherever you are in high school, college, or, club team, every year you get different kids. Every year you might get kids from different cultures, different families, how people raise them too. Like, I mean, it's important. So for me, like, being also in the US, even, here at IMG, we have kids from all over the world, right? So it's important, let's not know that everybody's different. Everybody's different. Everybody, like, communication is different to kids. Even coach to kid or kid to coach, like how they perceive information, how they take the information, understand it, and how can they execute it. Some people are visual, some people like to be yelled at, some people like to, stay quiet, so it's important to understand that. So what I learned is, all these differences from, countries, cultures, training methods. Some guys, part of my career was some guys never like to lift weights, but they could do like functional training with 5 pounds, but perform at a high level on the Sunday or the Olympics, or even in Turkey or Russia, right? So there's just different training methods. You can't just have one way of doing practice, right? One way of just hitting lines or setting or all those stuff, like people, you have to understand your players, what they need, right? Build a relationship, and then design practices or situations where they can thrive, right? Interaction, communication. I mean, like, and then in Greece and Turkey, Argentina, it's chaos. Even driving down the street, I mean, people honk, and there's the one way, the people come from all the ways, but that's their culture. That's how they thrive and learn. And, even in practices, they like to yell and scream, and it's kind of a loud environment, So not saying that I became a loud person, but, I understood that that's how they, I wasn't getting angry if somebody yelled at me, for example, right? I wasn't getting like down because these guys are speaking loud. It was just the way that they needed to perform, So just understanding, being honestly being a human being, and just understand the culture, understand the difference, and just really try to adapt and be the best you can be, And if you adapt, right? If you adapt to your team, to your players, or to the coaching style, then it's really, really, really cool to see after, like, you have the ability to learn, to learn the skill set, to learn the communication, to learn the method that this coach or you are trying to put in place, or the coach is putting in place to you. And you're able to, learn, lead, and execute, I called it, right? Like, so you learn, you execute it, and then you lead the team. For me as a setter, that was very important, because each team I went, they had I had different hitters, different speed, different height, different needs, different systems, of setting. So I was like, how am I going to do this in 3 years? Like, I was 7 years in Italy, but like, like in some parts of the world, like Greece and Turkey, they like to play high balls. I mean, they like this like slow offense, and even on good passes. So, I was able to adapt. And I'm like, hey, whatever my team needs, I got to do. So I'll work on that, and some leagues like Italy or, when I was in Argentina, they like to play super fast. And then US, we had this consistent way of method of training that we had this kind of, fast but high, but, be consistent, be kind of safe. When the ball is off the net, let's set a high ball so our hitters can get a big swing. So more rely on the teamwork side than make, trying to be a hero. But, I had to adapt. The lesson I learned is like, they're being adaptable, being open-minded, to learn. I think if I know everything, I'm in the wrong group. We've heard all that, all about. So we don't know everything, and it's really important to learn. It's really important, to have the kind of growth mindset. You'd be amazed by having that open communication, line of communication with the coaches, the players. You learn a lot. You learn a lot about what I talk about here. Like differences, the communication, how they like to be coached and trained, and then you can craft the practice or structural game strategies. Like, some people in the games, they don't like, my coaches understood that in the game, they just needed to give me like little feedback. I didn't need much, like just whatever I was doing wrong, just tell me. I was very upfront with the coach. Like, you don't need to, baby, just tell me what I'm doing wrong. I'll fix it. I don't need the whole speech around motivation. That was me. Some guys need that. Some girls might need that, so it's important to know that so you can perform at a high level. At high level can mean anything, right? It can be a high school game, can be a club game, can be, getting a bid or playing for a national championship or Olympics, So for me, these are like the most important lessons that I learned. And if there's any questions on this slide, please, this would be a good time. So before we go to the other one.
So Donald, a question here. You were a captain and a leader for several of your squads that you played on over the years. And obviously a setter plays a massive leadership role on the court. So what were some of the strategies that coaches helped you develop to lead in those kind of challenging team climates?
Yep. Transparency, build trust. I think even on my side as Donald, very direct communication with my coaches, and they understood that. And the coaches came to me, we sat together and, kind of devised a plan. It's like, okay, what I have to do as Donald, as a setter first. I think, part of a teamwork is like, first of all, I got to do my job really well. Like, I got to be the best setter possible for my team. And what does that mean? I got to set a consistent offense, the same ball in the same place, find out the weak points, move, get the guys with one block up, So we had a strategy. So I had to become the best version of myself, skillfully, technically, tactically, athletically, right? So that was number one thing that we said with the coach. And number two is like, okay, what I have to do to, help our team perform at a high level, So the coaches will have this conversation back and forth. We watch video. Hey, look at your body language. Hey, look at this set. Look at your technique. Look at this. And then by having a kind of positive criticism, and having a growth mindset on my part, I knew exactly. I was very clear on my role, what I had to do as a setter, what I had to do as a defender, as a blocker, as a jump server. Like I love to jump so far, right? Who doesn't, right? I hit the ball hard, but then I was missing points, right? So coaches came to me like, hey, you actually hurting your team more than you helping. Like, I know you came from Europe and they want you to blast serves, but at national team, we have this, different strategy that let the block do the work. We have great defenders. We have 6'10" opposite blocking, right? So having that USA team and Italy had this kind of system, really, I became mindful of things I had to do extra for my team. Of course, number one was setting. I had to be the best setter possible, but blocking, for example, they'll tell me, like, hey, don't try to reach where you one-on-one. Let the defense do the work. You got 5 guys that were great ball control guys. So kind of being more, humble, right? And just allowing kind of my skill set to help my team win. So it was just very transparent communication, defining the role that I had. And I was able to execute that, learn, growth mindset, and execute it. So yeah, great segue here. So, as we always talk about, players that play can be coaches, can be coached. It's a whole different system. When you play, it's fun, right? You just show up in the game and they'll practice and you have everything set up and you just execute and go home and sleep. And, when we become a coach, oh my God, I was like, this is a lot of work. It was a lot of work. So like, it kind of changed my perspective of how hard all our coaches work, the USA team, even pro coaches, to design these practices, to build these structures, because it's not about X and O's, honestly. I mean, like, you got to be good at that. But I think, building those relationships, understanding people, being one with the players, also having that respect. I mean, it takes a lot of time, So for me, how do I integrate these lessons? I learned, right? I mean, if you guys see here, when I learned, Russia and Poland was very authoritative. We've all learned that the one way or the highway kind of a system or program or culture. When the coach says something, you do it. You come in the morning, you got to serve 100 balls, or we playing this way. There's no room for negotiations. There's nothing there, versus kind of a little bit more autonomy and supportive. Italy and US, we relied more on being accountable, training hard, training effective, but having kind of more inclusive and supporting line of communication. Like when we had the communication with coaches, we had the communication with the team. I mean, after practice, would sit outside with the opposites or the outsiders and work on our rhythm of setting, where in Russia and Poland was just pretty much, you got to do it. This is what this guy needs, and you do it. Where the more supportive, more autonomous, more kind of accountable, it helped me play better. I mean, again, everybody's different. For me, what I learned and what I bring in is like, I thrive at allowing me to be accountable, but also guiding me and being disciplined on my skill set, and having a kind of open line of communication, The other part, was structure versus chaotic, right? I mean, Italy and US, I mean, every practice was designed to details, and there was a why behind it, which I really enjoyed. And I think comparing these systems, Russia and Poland, there's no why behind practice, or the game was just, you got to do it. Where in Italy and US, like I remember in Italy playing for the best teams, Trentino, Treviso, every morning we do this setter practice, right? Where they have this setter targets on it, front and back, and the coach would be like, hey, you just got to do 10 balls. I call the ball in midair, and you got to set, red or go, right? But you got to do 10 in a row. And you can do this in 5 minutes, or you can do this in 5 hours. But if you do this is why it's going to help you as a player, because you're going to be really deceptive. And deception doesn't mean to move your hands. Deception means to be under the ball at all the time and set the last second. So just explaining and having a line of communication to why this drill, although boring and primitive, but it's going to make it that much better. And you focusing and being here now, right? Being present and giving you 100%, it's going to make it a much better player. And we had the same system in US, we did design drills and there was a why behind it. And versus chaotic, we go to Greece and Argentina or Dubai, we show up in practice and the coach sometimes would say like, hey, what do you guys want to do today? Or like, let's work on defense or in offense. And it kind of loses that respect, especially at a higher level, and loses that, half of the guys are not even motivated to, to play. And they were just, behind everything. Right. So it was very interesting to go through these systems. And for me, again, like I saw, like I learned from each one of them, and I was able to, bring this, to where I am today with the USA team and also with IMG. So I'll leave it for some questions. I don't think here.
So you mentioned here that, especially in Italy and Russia, it was really critical to have that supported and open line of communication. So how now as a coach do open lines of communication make your job easier?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, for me, like, I mean, at IMG, even a USA team will do these camps. I mean, the first thing I do every day, like, we have a whiteboard, we write down our goals, we write down our practice plans, we communicate with the girls, what we're doing, where we are and where we're going and why we're doing that, So, and it's incredible. Because we all on the same page, right? Like there's I call it no blind spots. There's no, no surprises, right? Like, oh, today I come to practice and we'll just jump 100 times. It's like, hey guys, we are here as a preseason, for example, at IMG. We're doing this month of heavy lifting and heavy running, and we're going to work only fundamentals, passing and serving. And in 2 weeks, we're going to break it down to hitting and blocking, So being transparent and being kind of a togetherness of like, open line of communication. You get that buy-in from your team, and you see that the coaches are committed. We have a process in place. There's a why behind it, and I see the girls, our girls, or the USA team being more committed, more focused on the process rather than just coming every day and going through the motion, right? So that's been a very huge thing for me. That kind of open line of communication, more inclusive, right? Like supportive. We have girls who are, have pain, or we have girls who maybe didn't sleep well. We try not to push them. When Russia and Poland, they didn't care if you're sick or if you're tired. I mean, you got to come on Monday morning at 7 a.m. and jump the train. And I saw a lot of injuries. I saw a lot of burnout, So the USA team in Italy was kind of what I loved the most, because it was like, hey, it's not like, hey, today I don't feel good. I'm not saying about the feelings. I'm saying about like physical pain or kind of sickness. Like, okay, well, I don't need you to train today because I know that you come fresh tomorrow. You're going to kind of have that effective training more than like just doing 3 hours every day for no reason, right? So it's been and having a kind of growth mindset, like being open, listening to the girls, listening to their feedback as well, what's working, what's not working, and just having that joint mission,
Yeah, that's fantastic, Donald. I am curious. We often see people kind of falsely equate the idea that if you give athletes autonomy, support, and some choice in their training, that inherently means something is unstructured. But what you just talked about was that in Italy and the US, you seem to have both an autonomy supportive climate from your coaches and a pretty structured climate. So can you speak to maybe an example or two of something the coaches did in Italy or US that both gave you choice as an athlete, but kept the structure?
Yeah, I mean, the structure for US was, for example, a couple of structures that I liked was when we traveled every weekend, and we had a several pass to go in the morning. Like we traveled to France on the Thursday and have a game on Saturday. So we had 2 trainings. So the coaches during the week, before training, we said like, hey, Donald, I don't work with, for example, older guys and younger guys. Hey, we're gonna do Saturday, like Friday morning server pass after before practice. But if you do this server pass here, I don't need you to do it in France. So it was kind of like that supportive kind of communication structure. Like, hey, we have this, but here's another example that you can do it now, so you can perform well on Sunday. Another one that I loved was, when we did the mission statement for USA Team 2005, was that we're going to become the best student of the game, so we had to watch film, we have to understand ourselves and be self-critical first, see what we're doing first, and then, excuse me, and then be team, second. So there was a structure, but also freedom of that. It wasn't a micromanagement, like, hey, you got to watch film every day, but it was expected that, like, hey, when you come back to practice, what we're supposed to do, like the offense and defense and setting and, body language. So, I mean, those couple of, that come in mind that really was open line of communication, was being accountable, and also have the structure and freedom that really helped us succeed.
Fantastic. That's a great example. I appreciate that.
Of course. Yeah. The next one, how to build a strong team culture. I think for me, from my own experience, not one size fits all. Even what I say today maybe doesn't work in your, and that's fine. I think being open-minded, understanding your players first. I mean, you gotta have a vision, you gotta have a guide, you gotta have a kind of a skeleton for what you're trying to build. Of course, like I believe in few things and I want to kind of execute them. But if you don't have the players, you can have all the, the guidelines of the world, nothing will work, right? So understanding your players, understanding what clicks, the communication, the supportive system. I mean, truly, like, knowing where they're from, what family they come from, like it's those little things make a big difference. So then you can build your own team culture and then really kind of grasp, each individual, inclusive. I mean, you can't win alone. This is a team sport, not tennis, right? It's not swimming. So inclusive, like everybody matters. Even that bench player, even that development players matter because he or she might see something that you don't see as a coach, or maybe even the top player don't see, right? So it's incredible to have the kind of inclusiveness from top to bottom, and feedback matters. Players matter and feedback. seek feedback. I think many times we as human beings feel like it's weak for me to ask you for feedback on my practice or my playing time because it makes me feel weak, but that's not true. I think, like again, when I play, I couldn't see everything. So I would rely on feedback from my teammate. I would ask my teammate, I'll ask my coach, I'll ask my parents, like, hey, what did you see? Like, was it good? Was it bad? How did I do? What do you think? And then, of course, you can't change everything, but having that feedback at all times is really important. Transparent. I see it a lot, throughout US, in the world, that coaches say one thing and they do another thing. Coaches promise one thing and they do something else. Be transparent. I mean, you get a buy-in from every single player or organization. Be upfront. What are you trying to build? Where are you going? Why are you doing what you're doing? What's the goals? And then have that roadmap for them. And of course, it won't be straight, but when you are transparent, those people will buy into your journey. And direct communication, like you see something, you say something, right? Like kind of it, but it's important to understand direct communication also. Like, communication is a skill, how you speak to players or coaches. Are you loud? Your eyes are down? Are you angry? Your shoulders, it's important to understand because, I'm a 6'5" guy. I'm a big guy and I work out. So I have young players here, 15-year-old girls. And if I talk loud and if I just kind of impose myself, you see the human being pull back, right? So it's important to understand forms of communication, direct, but be direct. If you see something, tell them, because they'll appreciate more. They might be a little bit angry at the moment, but down the road they'll appreciate it. Hold them accountable. I mean, micromanaging authority never works. It becomes heavy if you micromanage every single practice, every single drill, every single rep. It's impossible to grow, right? You're gonna get burnt out. Those girls or boys gonna get burnt out. So have that plan, build that, that feedback, and not one size fit all, and just hold them accountable and say like, okay, like at the end of a week or never practice, end of the month, here's what we have to do, And if we don't, I mean, everybody looking to play, everybody looking to be the starter or go D1 or college, and just be direct. Like, hey, if you want to go there, this is the route to go, and write it down and make it visible for them. And as a coach, as a leader, lead by example. I mean, be prepared because it's not what I say, what I do, right? Everybody has eyes on you as a head coach, as a director of program. So if you build the culture you want to build, you got to lead it. You got to breathe it, right? You can't just fake it. It's good to learn from everybody, but you got to have your own identity and just really lead with it. So I'll pause for a second for some questions.
I was about to say there's some good questions here. So, okay. Donald, you speak to not one size fits all and kind of meeting your athletes where they're at. So how do you balance that kind of the individual needs developmentally and performance-wise for your athletes while also still moving the team forward?
Of course. I call it like I got boys, I'm a parent. It's kind of a good cop, bad cop type mentality, one size fits all. That's why I put that first there, and below is kind of that feedback, transparent communication, accountable. Is first of all, you try to understand this player. And of course, you can't make everybody happy, but you try to understand them, and then you build the mission and the practice plan or your vision based on your players. And then you have the players buy-in. Like example was when with the USA team 2005, when we had that mission statement where we set down everybody. I mean, we're all different. We have different needs. Like, like I said, like some guys don't want to work hard. Some guys don't want to lift a lot of weights because they perform better. Some guys don't watch videos 3 hours, but we were very clear, was a kind of a clarity and direct communication from the coach, from the doctor, from the study player, we all had the same vision or mission. And then when you share that and when you're transparent, all these players after will adapt. Like I told you, like, when I went to, all over the world, when we was clear that vision and mission, and the coaches kind of build those practices and build those games, to kind of cater a little bit to everybody, it was, you matter, right? Like players matter. When I knew that the coach didn't make me jump 100 times a morning because he knew that, my knees hurt, but I had to jump 50 times. I mean, nobody saw that, but it was kind of like everybody was on board because they knew, for example, that, hey, Donald has a bad knee, job this morning, but he's doing, 40 reps. So that's what I think, understanding them, be transparent, that vision, mission, and just building all that, and then sharing with the players. I mean, really, feedback matters.
Yeah, that's great stuff. So, Donald, the next question comes to that idea that you were just speaking on with feedback matters, of being humble enough to say, of course, we want feedback as coaches on what's happening. But I also think it's probably pretty important to cultivate that openness to feedback in the players as well. So their players on the court can provide each other feedback in that. So is that something that you have any tips or strategies for doing and building on the team?
Yes, we work every day. Actually, it's funny you said that. That's a great question because yes, it's coaches to players, but actually we worked yesterday with our setters and hitters. Was working on the rhythm and feedback. Was interesting because as a human beings, we're afraid to offend the other person, right? Like the girl or the guy next to you. And some people have feedback, body language, like higher or closer, right? We've seen that. Some people put their head down. So at IMG, we're working again on the direct feedback. Like it's like we stop that drill and say, okay, what's the feedback? Well, the setter will say, I know that's general. Like, oh, okay, well, Jenny is not on time. She said a little bit lower. Okay, that's direct feedback. So kind of having that and the tone of the feedback, like staying away from body language and then having a kind of eye-to-eye conversation with the player to players, like, hey, I need the ball a bit higher. Hey, be still, off the net. And we work with the middles, having that window, chest to chest with the setter for the gap. And when you don't see that, I told the setters, don't set it. Like if you don't hear that, you don't see that middle, don't set it. It's like, but coach, I'm afraid because she's an all-star. I'm like, it doesn't matter. This is a team. So let's talk. So I'll stop the drill. I'll take the setter with the middle and say, hey, what's the feedback here? So they're like, I cannot see you. Great. Okay. Hazel, or some other girl, what can you do so she can see you? Well, I got to turn my hitch on. Great. Okay. Let's go do it again. I will go back to repetition. So I just think kind of, again, you can't stop every single practice or every single drill, but having that direct open communication is huge.
Yeah, I think that's a really powerful recommendation. So thank you for that, Donald. Because really, when we look at it, we think about stopping practice all the time to give skill corrections, right? But we don't necessarily think about it to stop to help our players in their communication and their tone.
It's huge. I mean, communication is untapped soft skill. I think it's the most important thing, like the way we communicate, how we communicate, and when. And I think that's just a huge skill set to learn. And it's, like anything else, you go to the gym and get stronger. Well, communication can get better. So awesome. Yeah, a few things that kind of from my own experience and what we're doing here at IMG and NTDP whenever I have a chance is, I call it humanized relationships. We all care about the players, right? Like jump serving or killing balls or stuffing people, that's, of course, that's important, like for our players to perform at a high level, but we got to humanize it. If we care for the kids or the players only for volleyball, then we miss the point. Then we're losing, because we're not robots, we're not machines, just put gas and drive. So just humanize the relationship. I don't say become best friends because it's got to be a respect between coach and players. But if the players know that you care, you take 5 minutes to ask her or him about how you're doing, how you feel, how's your family, know their names. It's important of the family members, or just get to know them, like where they're from, how they grew up. I always whenever I talk to parents, I talk about their kids. Hey, how did she grow up? Like, when did she go to school, or what is she like as a young kid, or how do you guys, once you get those tools or little, nuggets, then you can really kind of shape these girls to perform at a high level, So just take some time and humanize relationship, not just, hey, we got to side out and we got to, kill the ball, because that's given. We play sports to perform, right? That if I have to worry about you killing a ball, then we shouldn't be here. Transparency equals trust. I cannot stress it enough. It's difficult these days because I understand club it is a business, and but be transparent where you are, what are you doing, where are you taking them, like I've had hard conversation that like, even here that, hey, my kid wants to go to D1. I'm like, well, her play, her effort, her level is not there yet at this moment. Can she get there? Sure. But here's where we have to go. I call like a GPS system. I have a kind of a nickname, GPS. Like we are like GPS. You are here now, you're going to go there. Like, so IMG will take you there, but maybe that's the wrong destination, right? So let's figure out the best destination for you. But I'm transparent, where these kids are and why and how we can get there. And it's incredible what happens that you create that trust with the player, you create trust with the parents. The more you go around the bushes, will never work. The more you overpromise, will never work. Tell them how it is. Unless you're coaching a 9-year-old, I mean, these kids are old enough. They understand, like, that if she didn't kill the ball, she didn't kill the ball. Or if she's feeling down, she's feeling down, Another thing that I'm really big, kind of be excellent today. Try to stay away from perfection, and it's unattainable to be perfect. I mean, honestly, we're human beings. But I think be excellent today, like, it's, for me, it works, and we are working very hard at that IMG. Like, how can I be excellent today and everything? When you come to training room, when you warm up, when you train, when you finish, train, like, are you taking the trash out? When you go to school and like, you go to sleep early, or, so just trying to be excellent on all aspects of your life builds a great foundation for you, for the future. And lastly, I think the most important one, which also changed my life, national team, was emotional intelligence. Again, we are human beings and we are very emotional. And I played in all different cultures that were high emotions. In Greece, Turkey, Argentina, you couldn't imagine, it was a war zone for volleyball. And I was in Russia where people don't even smile, or if you win if you win a championship or you lose, it's a kind of, zero emotions, right? So I've seen it all. But I think the key there is like the respond versus react, right? I think our game is such a fast, people misunderstand volleyball. They say it's easy game. I think it's a really hard game. You got 30 seconds, 6 kids, 6 players on a, confined area and you got like 9 seconds to, for the next point. So the fast-paced game includes a lot of muscles. It includes a lot of movement. You got to think fast and adapt and forget fast, right? So our response versus react, like we want to stay away from reaction, to react to a situation, to losing a point, to yelling, to getting down on ourselves, and there's just kind of, that's a skill to learn, like it's more like, hey, how we respond to it, how we kind of forget and forgive and then get back to the basics, type thing. So those are what I've tried to build here at IMG, like, 4 kind of pillars, and it's, it's working wonderful. It's not easy. It takes time, it takes time and takes leadership. And I have to lead by example as well. But yeah, any questions?
Yeah, Donald, this is a great question for you. It's a tough one. So I'm curious to hear what you say. Okay. So as we think about building emotional intelligence in athletes, you mentioned that part of how you built that was the breadth of playing experience you had. So when you're dealing with, IMG aged athletes and DTP aged athletes, what are kind of your recommendations for helping to build emotional intelligence, both in your individual athletes and in your team as a whole, so your team responds instead of reacts?
Mm-hmm. I think try to be realistic where these kids are, kids are hard these days, hard on themselves, a lot, pressure from social media, pressure from everything, right? So I think, when I talk to kids, emotionally, I'm like, hey, it's about being prepared, and it's not an end, right? It's not the end of your journey. It's where you are now. And that's not a bad thing and I just try to relate myself to that. When I was your age, I wasn't even close to where you are or your skill set, and just kind of being transparent with them where they are and clarify to them how or where they're going to go, because they get lost. You lose a set, you lose a game, the college coach is there, they don't get seen, or they want an email, they get crushed, but that's not the end of a journey, it's a journey. That's just a part of it, so kind of, I work also a lot with breathing, like kind of take a deep breath or take 10 breaths and let's come up with a plan. of responding versus like just getting angry or getting sad or, throwing the ball or just kind of giving up, because we don't know the future. I mean, nobody owns the future, honestly. Nobody owns, tomorrow. So I try to really, really be realistic with the girls about like, hey, this is where you are. This is your skill set. This is what happened. People lose games, people lose sets. It's about the forget and forgive and kind of creating that kind of skill set there. And also kind of, breathing is a big difference, kind of having the breath work. We work a lot at IMG before practice, after practice, even in games, like blowing down your breath. And it's amazing once you get out of that mud zone, right? Like I call it the mud zone. We all get stuck on that in the game or in the match or in practice. Like we gotta do, okay, calm down, breathe, and then we'll talk about after, So just having a couple of nuggets ready to go and just being real with the kids at the moment, I think it's helping me quite a bit. And then building on that like a house, stone by stone.
Yeah, that's great. I was going to ask you if you had any 2-minute rundown of what you hope coaches take away from this, but actually I think this slide is a pretty comprehensive version of that, but I'll ask it anyway. So Donald, anything that you really hope coaches take away from your presentation today?
I think for me, like, be open-minded, have a growth mindset, ask for help. Honestly, like, we as coaches, we don't know everything. There's a lot of great coaches out there. There's a lot, especially now we're so lucky with the internet. I mean, reach out to different coaches online, offline, give, a call, an email, ask for advice. I mean, like, it's incredible how people are willing to share, even the successful ones. You can email them, call them, or social media and just ask them like, hey, I'm stuck. I don't know how to do the offense or defense or build the culture. Like, don't be afraid. I think I tell the players too, like, don't be afraid to ask for help. We don't know everything, So, make sure you reach out. Make sure that you understand that one size doesn't fit all. Get to know your players, get to know what you have. Like, I'll give an example of offense. I'm sure coaches have their own system of offense. Like, I want to play fast or I will do this and that. Well, what kind of players do you have? Do you have the right players to run that offense? And if you don't, that's okay. Just design something with the players you have. Don't get distracted or down just because your offense doesn't work. That's just because you have not gotten to know the players, well enough to run that offense. And really kind of focus on the moment. Today, like, I think many coaches or club teams or high schools or colleges focus on like the national championship, that bid, the medal, that one, the triple crown in Kansas City. Like, for me, I'm like, I don't care. Who cares? I'll give you an example. We're in preseason for a month and a half. We had a parent weekend at IMG, I did the scrimmage for the parents. People to see their girls, how they're playing. And everybody was excited, like, oh my God. I'm like, for me, I don't care how they play today. I don't care if they play terrible. Like, well, why? It's simple. I'm like, because we have a process. I know where we are. I know where we're going. It's not about today, I said. And then like, oh, okay. Because even the players were kind of upset with themselves. Like, well, coach, I didn't play well. I'm like, I know. It's a reason for that. And this is why, because we're running, we're lifting, we haven't played 6-on-6. And they bought in on that, right? They were on board with that. So, and they created an emotional intelligence, strength as well. So, I think those are the few things, to take and adapt. And I'm happy to help, after this conversation, anybody.